Welcome, everyone, to Voices of NCAJ, the podcast for the North Carolina Advocates for Justice. I am Amber Nimocks, your host and Deputy Director of NCAJ. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our Circle of Leadership members for supporting NCAJ's mission and this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see a list of Circle of Leadership firms at the end. To find out how your firm can join the circle, go to ncaj.com/circle. My guest today is John McCabe. He is the principal attorney at the law office of John McCabe and Carey and a past president of NCAJ. This spring, John, along with Brian Davis, Beth Davis, and Meredith Hinton, won a record-setting jury award of $101 million for a pair of men seriously injured by the collapse of a retaining wall in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And this June at convention, NCAJ convention, John was honored with the organization's Founders Award. It's the highest honor that the NCAJ gives and recognizes extraordinary service to justice and to the advocates for justice in the tradition of our founding members. John will present a debrief of the record-breaking trial for members of NCAJ's Auto Tort section on Wednesday, September 16th. If you'd like to be in on that, please make sure that your membership in NCAJ and Auto Torts has been renewed for the 2026-27 year at ncaj.com/join. John, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Amber, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Congratulations on this incredible win in this trial and on being honored with the Founders Award this June. It was a fortuitous bit of timing when you found out about the award, right?
It was. So we were in the middle of trial. It was a 6-week trial that we were in. We were probably 4 weeks into it. I was exhausted, Amber, completely exhausted. I was working 21 hours a day and just was beat up and was kind of just run down, just mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. And I kept getting a phone call from Karma Henson. Okay, and Karma and David and I are really, really close. And Karma knew I was in trial, and I was like, man, she's really trying to track me down. I said, something must be going on. Something bad's happening somewhere. And I actually called her on my way to court one morning. It was early at like 8 o'clock, court 8 in the morning. And she informed me that I was getting the Founders Award, which was a complete surprise because I was on the nominating committee. And it never got mentioned. So it was great to have that. Brought kind of tears of joy to my eyes, and kind of gave me a burst of adrenaline and a little push that I kind of needed to help me with some of that exhaustion I was going through.
That's fabulous. I'm so glad that that worked out like that.
It was really cool.
And this was the end of 5 years of working on this case. How did this case come to you?
So the case actually, it was 5.5 years from start to finish, from the time it happened until we got through the jury trial. It'd been in litigation for 4 years. The clients came to me. I'm fortunate. I have a bit of a statewide practice and do a bunch of stuff up in Western North Carolina. And I had another client up in Hendersonville who was close to this family. And when this happened, they got in touch with each other and reached out to me. So within several days of this wall collapsing, the family had reached out to me and had retained me to be their attorney.
And this was, it was a terrible tragedy. The one of the other workers on site lost his life, correct?
That's right. So there were 4 injured workers, all of whom were represented by NCAJ members, all separately represented. But yeah, there was the gentleman who was standing very close to my client who died. His name was Marcelino. He was represented by Michelle Clifton. Then I had one of the injured workers. Brian Davis had another one of the injured workers, and Meredith Hinton did as well.
And this was there's a lot of information on our website. Lee Rodeo did a terrific verdicts and settlements report that can, if folks want to get into sort of like the really technical details of it, they can look that up. And you will also be doing a trial debrief, as I mentioned, where I would imagine you'll talk about some of that. But What was really sort of interesting to me in reading about this case was that it was remarkable not just for the size of the verdict, but also for the theory of the case that you pursued and how you framed it. How did that work? How did that happen?
That's a good question. So let me tell you what the defense theory was, because it kind of ties into your question. The defense theory was this was a masonry wall built by a masonry company by masonry workers, and the masonry wall fell. And it
Mhm.
was a masonry problem, it was a construction problem, and nobody else's problem. So that was the defense. And all the injured workers were the masons who worked on the project. So we
Mhm.
had an employer negligence issue, and then we had a contrib issue as well. The other issue that we faced was the defense was saying, well, these are, we hired the masonry company, we relinquished control over this job site to the masonry company, and
Mhm.
this was all their fault, and we had no duty here.
Mm.
The way we attacked that was by establishing that that was not in fact the case, that the people in charge of the project, not the ones necessarily building the wall, but the ones who were coordinating it, scheduling it, directing it, supervising it, basically acting as the general contractor on the project, were the property owner, and more importantly, the property owner's tenant, which was Hajoka, which is the largest privately owned plumbing supply company in the country. And
Mm.
they call their stores profit centers, and the profit center manager in Hendersonville was the person that we claimed was in control of the entire project. That he made the decisions, he hired the folks, he sequenced the work, he was the one that contributed to making sure there was no engineering, that there was no permitting. And then, most importantly, after the wall was built and before the concrete that had been poured in it to kind of stabilize it had cured, he
Mhm.
disregarded recommendations and backfilled it with 210 tons of backfill before it was ready to withstand that load. And
Wow.
so we were able to show that he was the one driving the thing, that this was a Hajoka project. It
Mhm.
was the tenant's project who was running everything. And that's kind of how we dealt with that defense approach.
Mhm. Mhm. And it took the jury 35 minutes to decide 16 liability issues and also pick a foreman, like
Right.
35 minutes.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
That sent such a message, at least to us. I'm not sure if the defense saw the significance of that. Uh, but the fact that the jury, and this was 4 weeks in, okay, so after 4 weeks of testimony, the jury got the case. They knew it, and we sensed that they had it. But the fact that they were able to return the jury verdict like that, and they filled out the jury verdict form exactly like we had suggested they do that as part of our closing argument,
Mhm.
showed us right away that they got it. What was interesting, they also decided as part of that there was a gross negligence issue that was in that jury verdict, and they checked that. So once we got that, we knew not only were we okay on liability and we were going to be okay on compensatories, we also know that when we got to the third phase of the trial, punitive damages, that we were going to get punitive damages as well. So it was a jury that got the case pretty clearly. They did not get fooled by some of the defense arguments, and they saw things really, really clearly. They were an incredibly attentive group.
How did you get this jury? That's like one of the key questions, right? Is everybody wants to know how to get this jury.
We had a magnificent jury, and I mean, they ruled for us, so certainly I'm going to say that. But they even if they didn't, I would still speak really highly of this jury
Mhm.
because they were just so attentive. They took their job so seriously. They took it so
Mhm.
seriously that after the trial was over, after 6 weeks, the judge, as he was thanking them, started tearing up, and just
Wow.
was telling them that they exemplified what our justice system was supposed to look like. So, how did we get them?
Wow.
That's the big question, right? It took 7 days of picking the jury, 7 court days to find the jury. We went through 3 separate jury pools. Okay.
Mm.
A ton of jurors were getting excused for cause, and a ton were getting excused for hardship. So that's why it took that many.
Mhm.
Because it was multi parties, each side had preemptory challenges. We had 12 preemptory challenges on both sides of the case. there were multiple defendants and then, multiple plaintiffs. Part of what we did was we did a lot of big data
Mm-hmm.
research on the case. We did a lot of empirical studies going into the trial. And based on the big data studies we ran, we kind of knew who we want, well, what type of person we want to have on the jury and what type of person we didn't want to have on the jury. So
Mm.
as we were doing jury selection, we actually had basically a scorecard almost. It was like analytics, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
Moneyball, with the baseball stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we were literally scoring jurors based on the criteria that we had determined based on our big data studies. And then what we
Mm.
were doing was using those numbers, whatever the score was, to help us decide whether or not to keep that juror or excuse that juror. And it was really a neat way to do it. I've never done it that way before in terms of picking a jury. And it was great
Mm-hmm.
because what I found is there were jurors that I probably would have left on the jury that I
Mm-hmm.
felt with, just felt good about, who by the numbers weren't good for us. And we got them off. And there were probably some other jurors who I probably didn't feel as connected to and a little bit more worried about. But the numbers were good. The data was good on those folks. The data points were really good. So that's how we got our jury. It was a really, really good jury. I think the defense thought that they were, we were in Western North Carolina, and I think they were anticipating a certain type of jury. And, um, the jury we got may have been the exact jury they anticipated, but we felt good about the jury once we had it picked.
And you said you never used this big data approach to jury selection before, but you decided to trust the numbers instead of solely trusting your gut this time. What flipped the switch in for you?
That was a bit of a process. So I got to tell you about my experience with big data. So there's some members of our trial team, particularly Brian Davis, who is my former law partner and is like a brother to me. He had
Mm-hmm.
used big data before and kept pushing the big data and said, trust it, trust it, trust it. I didn't have exposure to big data, and I was highly, highly skeptical of it. I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
I like what it's saying. I like the people who are doing the work for us, but I just I have no reference point for this other than just believing, my former law partner saying, trust this, trust this, trust this. So as we got into the process, even going through the trial, I was in the back of my mind was going a little skeptical of it. And we had shared our big data with the other side. I mean, we told them we'd run these studies. We gave that to them during one of the mediations. We had our big data presentation as part of our mediation, and the other side completely discounted it. They just thought there was nothing
Really?
to it. Yeah, so
Huh.
they completely discounted it, which I kind of understood at the time because I didn't fully trusted, and again was a little bit skeptical of it because I didn't have any reference point to it. But I did trust, when Brian's saying trust the data, I trusted the data, but did it with a little bit of pause in my gut.
Mm-hmm.
But as we got into the trial and got the jury, I felt good about the jury. It was like that was really good. The big data showed going into trial that we had a 90% chance of winning. And
Mm.
they also showed us, kind of what the potential jury verdict was. And what I'd always been told is, don't necessarily trust the data you're getting from say, a focus group or something like that as part of your pretrial prep because it's not really accurate in terms
Mm-hmm.
of how a jury's actually going to be. But this big data was actually helpful in that regard. And the other thing that we did was, the folks that did the big data for us also gave us data on the reliability of their big data. So they showed
Oh.
us their success rate and what other cases where they had predicted a particular outcome and then showed us what the outcome was. And it wasn't just one or two. There was a lengthy list of it. So I had some data to support the big data. But admittedly, I was a little bit not completely bought in, but by the end of the trial, I was completely bought in on big data. And now I will talk about big data till the cows come home because it was just it just something different and it was accurate. I mean, it was just it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Trust the data.
Trust the data. All right. But your client's testimony was also a big part of this case, right?
Yeah. So my clients, I love my clients. Okay, Beto and Lupita. Okay, Beto was the worker. His formal name's Alberto, but he goes by Beto, and his wife is Lupita. They were, they're just great people. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
always thankful, very humble, honest, kind of shy people.
Mm-hmm.
And we got them up on stand. Beto testified twice, testified once during liability and then once on compensatory damages. And when Beto got up there, he testified through an interpreter. English was not his first language. We
Mm-hmm.
asked the jury about that. Is everybody okay with him testifying through an interpreter? And the jury was fine with that. Um, when Beto got up and started talking about what it was like for him to be trapped under that wall and
Mm.
buried alive for an hour, um,
Mm.
he had everybody in the courtroom crying, including the interpreter. Okay.
Wow.
And it was honest and it was raw and it was unscripted and it was vulnerable. Beto had only talked about that experience. He had never talked about that experience with anybody. Okay. Never talked about it with his wife, never talked about it with any of his medical providers because he kept it bottled up inside.
Mm-hmm.
The first time he ever testified about it was, or talked about it, was during his deposition. And then
Mm-hmm.
the second time he did it was in front of the jury. All the emotion came out and it was authentic and real and impactful. And again, had everybody in the courtroom just kind of in tears as he described this ordeal of being buried alive, face down, unable to move, thinking he
Oh
was going to
God.
die. And he was conscious. And, his teeth were knocked out. He had blood everywhere. And he was describing this really graphically and very passionately, but again, unscripted. It was literally just him talking about it. His wife, Lupita, was amazing as well. She had a loss of consortium claim, which was really the first time I had tried a loss of consortium claim, because usually I don't bring those. Okay. But this was the
Uh-huh.
one case where, knowing who my clients were,
Mm-hmm.
I and knowing what the injuries were, I believed in this. We actually ran big data to determine whether or not we should actually try the loss of consortium claim or not. Whether it would,
Oh, really? Huh.
whether or not it would benefit the case or detract from the case. And the data said it's good, keep it in there.
Mm-hmm.
Lupita got up on the stand, and Lupita, like her husband, hadn't really talked about things. And I remember preparing her for her deposition. She had a real hard time kind of reliving and finding the words to describe everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we got her up on the stand, and she was unbelievable. So she is a kindergarten teacher in Hendersonville, and she got on the stand and she became a kindergarten teacher. And she got
Mm-hmm.
up there and this was all natural. Okay, that's the most important part of this from an attorney standpoint. My clients were their authentic selves. They were being them. They weren't trying to act and be anybody different. Lupita got on the stand and had the jury laughing and crying like within minutes of each other. She was absolutely
Wow.
incredible, and she would talk about one of the funny things we asked her was, well, when you and Beto met, they were teenagers when they met. Was it love at first sight? And she went, "Oh, it wasn't love at first." Everybody's expecting yes, it was love at first. And she went, "No." She said, "Look at Beto. He's this short, skinny guy, and look at me. I'm overweight, and this was not a good fit at all." So she
Wow.
had the whole jury kind of laughing about that. And then she started talking about what it was like. Um, she was initially told that Beto had died, okay,
Ooh.
which was big. And she's talking about that. And then the other part of this, Amber, was this happened during COVID. So an
Oh.
hour after she's told her husband is dead, she gets a call saying, "Oh, he's actually alive." But she can't go into the hospital and eyeball him to confirm it. So she's standing outside Mission Hospital in Asheville in the cold, unable to get in there, and doesn't know for sure that her husband's still alive. And it was weeks before she could get in there to actually see him.
It was weeks before she could see him?
Weeks. And what was
Oh my
interesting
gosh.
is after Beto was hospitalized for about a month and then went to inpatient rehab. So he took him
Mm-hmm.
by ambulance to inpatient rehab. And he's getting out of the ambulance. He's being wheeled on the stretcher. His wife and his two young children, who were 2 and 4 years old at the time, are standing in the parking lot. They're across from the parking lot waving at the dad. And it's the first
Mm,
time the kids had seen the dad and the first time Beto had seen his kids since this had happened. And they
mm.
couldn't get close to each other because of COVID. And that was all came out during Lupita's testimony. It was really powerful.
And you didn't know exactly how that was going to go since you had only like heard this testimony like through the deposition, right? That was, I mean, so you was it it's a different thing to have that deposition and then to have that interaction with the jury.
Sure, because during the depositions, the defense lawyer asking the questions, and if certain information doesn't come out, it doesn't come out. If a certain question's not asked.
Uh-huh.
When we got in front of the jury, and certainly as we prepared more for trial, and I had spent a ton of time with Beto and Lupita. I mean, just a
Mhm.
ton of time. One, because I love being around them. They're the type of people you want to be around. So I got to know them, and as we were preparing, you start diving into things a little bit bigger, and we talk about the kids being in the parking lot when Beto's being wheeled in from the ambulance to go to inpatient rehab,
Mhm.
and that suddenly becomes so powerful. And
Right.
I knew them so well that we could just when she was testifying, we were literally just talking. Although she made sure that she, talked to the jury. But it was such
Mhm.
a conversation and it was not scripted. And, I had an outline, but we weren't reading off of it. And we just talked and it just came across. It was just so natural and authentic and unscripted. And that's why not only were the clients great, they delivered it in a way that was authentic. And it was
Mhm.
completely consistent with kind of what our approach been to the entire case is. We have to be credible across the board. And they really did come across as really credible.
Mhm.
I'll tell you this, after the jury, we got done, we all went back. The jury stuck around for hours to talk to us. And Beto
Really?
and Lupita came back and met the jury, and everybody was hugging everybody. It was amazing.
Wow.
It was one of the most, maybe the most powerful moment I've ever had as a lawyer was watching Beto and Lupita in that jury after we resolved the case and were able to talk to them.
Wow. So when you mediated this trial or this case for years before you went to trial, right?
I personally mediated my case 4 times. We
Wow.
mediated it once pre-suit, once court-ordered mediation. After that failed, there was another attempt to try to settle with just me. That failed. And then there was a global mediation the Saturday before the start of trial. And
Mhm.
at that Saturday before trial mediation, the wrongful death case settled. 3 days after that, Meredith Hinton settled her case. And that left me and Brian. So we had on my cases, 4 failed mediations with 3 different mediators. We tried various different mediators too and just couldn't get the case settled.
And what you heard from the mediators and the defense was you're never going to see a verdict like that in Western North Carolina.
That's exactly what we heard. That was it the entire time. There was certainly fights about liability and fights about damages and things along those lines, but it's just like you're crazy if you think you're going to ever see these types of numbers in Western North Carolina.
What made you believe that you would?
I'm coming back to the big data.
Mhm.
It was my skeptical yet trusting belief that the data was right. And I think the other thing, Amber, and this is really important, the defense basically forced me and Brian to try our cases. Okay.
Really?
There's certain things I can't talk about, but they basically forced me and Brian to try the case. And
Mm.
as we got into it and we started to see the jury, we paid a lot of attention to the jury and we
Mhm.
felt we had the jury. Now, I've also had cases before where I felt I had the jury and didn't, but I felt really good about the jury. And then certainly when we get that liability verdict that you talked about and the timing that we talked about, I felt great at that point
Yeah.
and was certainly, that was a game changer for us. So the data, certainly getting into trial, feeling really good about your jury, and then seeing how the jury was reacting to the evidence.
It's amazing. There's so much more for us all to learn from you about this case, and we've got a couple of ways for folks to do that, and they can go read Lee Rodeo's account on the website, ncaj.com/news/Valdez, and or look for it in next month's trial briefs. And also, they can hear you do a complete debrief for our auto tort section on Wednesday, September 16th. And I'm sure that you will be talking about this in many other places and to NCAJ members and the wider world at large, right?
It's fascinating. I keep telling folks it was like a movie, and it was literally like a movie. And I sometimes, when I'm talking about cases, I go, well, I'm probably boring these people. This case is literally fascinating, and the way it just kind of all came together is absolutely fascinating. It's like a movie. So I've had a lot of phone calls from people and talked to a lot of people about it, and look forward to continuing to talk to people about it. It truly was fascinating.
Awesome. Well, congratulations
Thanks.
on the award and on the case, and to your clients for you staying in the fight and coming out victorious. That's really awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Amber.
John.
Thank you.